Hello and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important and interesting tech stories in Asia. Today is the 13th of April, 2026. Let's get right to it. We want to talk about MUFG, a massive Japanese bank, is acquiring a strategic stake in Shriram Finance. We believe that TSMC's business is a signal that AI demand in Asia is surging. And later in the program, we'll be joined by Simon Smallcombe, APAC insurance partner at Capco, to explore how AI and agentic AI are actually impacting the insurance industry today. The big headline here is that MUFG's almost $3 billion Shriram bet is really a bet on India's financial rails. MUFG's completed purchase of roughly 20% of Indians' Shriram Finance is not just a large banking transaction. It is a multi-billion-dollar bet by Japanese capital on one of India's most important non-bank lending platforms, and by extension, on the credit, distribution, and financial infrastructure behind India's growth. How big is this deal really? And why did it make headlines now? Well, MUFG said it completed the purchase on April 8th for a total investment of approximately $4.3 billion using the April RBI reference rate. MUFG called the transaction the largest cross-border investment in India's financial services sector, and that alone makes it more than a routine minority stake deal. It is a statement-sized capital allocation into India's lending system, and the scale matters in context. There has been reporting that foreign investment into India's financial services market reached nearly $15 billion in 2025. So this single transaction at let's just call it $3 billion, accounts for a very large share of that broader increase from last year. It's a big number. So what exactly is MUFG buying when it buys a 20% stake of Shriram Finance? This is not like a speculative fintech story. It's not like investing into a startup. It's buying into one of India's largest NBFCs, so non-banking financial corporations, with Shriram described by MUFG as the second largest retail NBFC in India by loan size, net income, and market cap. MUFG's December presentation put Shriram's loan balance at almost $29 billion, net income at $919 million, and their market cap at $18 billion. So again, just to put the purchase and the stake into context, they put $4 billion into an $18 billion valuation company. It's not 25%, right? It's 20%, but it's a big number. Big number. By the end of December 2025, Shriram said assets under management had reached about $31.5 billion. They had 3,225 branches and almost 78,000 employees and almost 10 million customers. This is real national distribution. Care Ratings, this is an Indian credit rating agency, right? Said Shriram's business is diversified, and this is really important too, across commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, MSME finance, two-wheelers, personal loans, farm equipment, and even gold loans. I mean, gold is a really important business in India, for sure. In other words, MUFG is buying exposure to a very broad credit engine that already sits deep inside India's transport, small business, and mass market economy. CARE, so the rating agency, also noted that Shriram's funding mix is diversified across deposits, external commercial borrowings, NCDs, longer-term loans, and securitization. This is important because MUFG is joining a platform that already has multiple funding rails and can surely scale further, possibly scale further, with cheaper offshore capital and a stronger global banking links. This is going to be a very, very important stake purchase for Japanese companies. But why is this so important? Why is it so strategically important for MUFG and in general for Japanese capital more broadly? You'll see the way this works. MUFG's own framing of this is very explicit. The deal is meant to support Shriram's growth, improve its funding capacity, give it access to MUFG's customer network, and give MUFG a business platform in India's MSME and retail segments so it can capture domestic demand tied to India's growth. This is not passive portfolio structure. This is serious platform entry. Now, we should also note that MUFG gets governance access as well. So after closing, Shriram becomes an equity method affiliate of both MUFG and MUFG Bank, and MUFG gains the right to appoint 2 board nominees. That gives MUFG influence, even though they don't get to take full control of the entire entity. That's important. This is the way the Japanese love to do business. They want to give you a lot of money, and they want to have some say in what happens in the business if they do give you a lot of money. And I want to make kind of a related point as well. If you go back to the late 80s and early 90s, and frankly, just watch any sort of surge in Japanese investment into any country, you'll see that what's happening right now is MUFG feels like a proxy for the rest of the Japanese economy to invest into the Indian economy. Okay, and if you look at the past, in my experience, if you see a Japanese car company invest somewhere, not only do the parts companies that are associated with it, the suppliers that are associated with it also invest in that new country, but the other car companies don't want to get left out. They'll move in one by one, bit by bit. Okay, if other manufacturing verticals move in, they're going to move, their competitors or their colleagues are going to move in as well, similar companies. And in this case, don't be surprised if more Japanese banks or more Japanese financial institutions move into India. And to be fair, the Japanese government just created a brand new piece of their government that is set up specifically to handle sort of business relations, investment relations between India and Japan. This is brand new, a brand new project for the Japanese government, some kind of coordination deal so that they believe that India is going to become very important to the financial and to the economic success of Japan going forward. This does fit a wider push. Reuters noted that MUFG had already invested $565 million in DMI finance in 2022 in India. And in March 2026, MUFG signed a strategic partnership with State Bank of India, SBI, to support Japan-India financing flows, M&A trade finance, and long-term capital formation. Japan is very serious about its investing future in India, and frankly, should be. That broader posture makes this look less like a one-off bet and more like a map in a way. Corporate banking with SBI, digital lending with DMI, and mass market credit distribution with Shriram. Japan is not only exporting products into Asia, it is buying positions inside the region's financial plumbing, and that's strategically very important, right? On the other hand, why is this like a tech-adjacent story, not just a banking story? Well, because the valuable asset here, one of the most valuable assets here, it's not just their loan book. It's not just their credit access. It's distribution, underwriting reach, collections capability, branch density. We said what they had, 3,775 branches, a lot of branches, right? Borrower data and funding architecture across millions of customers. In financial services, that is infrastructure. And that's very, very important. Shriram's scale across branches, customers, and product lines is what makes the platform strategically important. MUFG's materials repeatedly emphasize Shriram's position in vehicle finance, MSME lending, and road transport linked credit. That means this is about on the pipes, the actual infrastructure that support India's real economy, trucks, small businesses, working capital, and the everyday movement of goods and commerce. And to be fair, this looks a lot to me like it's not the same thing, but it looks similar to what Berkshire Hathaway did when they started investing in railroads. Railroads seem like old, traditional, boring businesses. But if you wanted to make a bet on the overall U.S. economy and shipping goods from coast to coast and from side to side and up and down, you would be in the railroad business. Because as the economy grows, if the economy is strong and powerful and dynamic, you'd have to ship a whole bunch more stuff. You want to be invested in the railroads. And in this case, it's not a railroad, but they are investing in businesses that provide capital to the pipes, essentially, the infrastructure that runs the Indian economy, trucks, small businesses, and working capital for those businesses. Really, really important. And again, there's a precedent for this, and it makes sense. Sometimes it's on a physical platform. Sometimes it's on a platform that supports that physical platform. And that's exactly what MUFG is doing here. And the timing also matters. Okay, in some cases, if you go back and look at the Japanese investing history, sometimes they don't get the timing right. Go look at when they bought the Pebble Beach golf course a long time ago. This is in the 80s. That didn't work out so well. But over the long term, it did. But in the short term, it was a nightmare. I think they also bought Rockefeller Center at one point. That ended up being a debacle. Anyway, even with the recent geopolitical pressure, the World Bank said India remains among the fastest growing major economies, projecting 6.6% growth for fiscal year 2027. So MUFG is buying into a credit and distribution platform that's in a fast growing domestic economy, not just chasing some kind of financial engineering. The big takeaway is that the next Asian story, or another Asian story is probably a better way to put it. It's not just about frontier AI labs or flashy startups, and we can spend plenty of time talking about both of those things as well. But it's also about who owns the rails of credit, payments, underwriting, securitization, and last mile financial distribution. Because you can have all the AI models in the world that you want, but if you don't have the grease, it's going to oil that factory, and that's generally finance, right? None of it's going to work. The MUFG Shriram deal is a clear sign that large incumbents see those rails as strategic assets worth multi-billion-dollar checks, right? This was like, what would we say, a $4.3 billion investment by MUFG into Shriram? Not a small amount of money. And the last point is an inference from the size of the investment, the governance rights, the operating scale of Shriram, and MUFG's stated India strategy. I think this is a big deal. Okay, let's talk about TSMC. TSMC's business is on fire. And I mean on fire in the best possible way. Let's go to some numbers. TSMC, so Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, reported March revenue of about $13 billion. That's up 45.2% year over year, while first quarter revenue rose 35.1%. Reuters also reported, and these things are related, that Taiwan's itself as a country, its March exports hit a record $80.18 billion, again, up 61.8%, with AI-related demand being a major driver. So you have to ask yourself a question. Does it look like a 1 month spike for TSMC? Or does it look like a stable AI build-out with real staying power? Well, we already went over the numbers, but the more important point is that Reuters tied that performance to unabated AI demand and noted that the result beat market forecasts while landing within TSMC's own prior range. It suggests that this number was not a fluke. So TSMC themselves were not surprised. They said, this is the amount of money we think we're going to earn within this range. And then boom, they went out and did it. But this is something that did not come out of nowhere, clearly. It's strong demand showing up in a business already guiding for strength. And if you dovetail that actually with Taiwan's own data, look, I want to back up for a second. We spent a lot of time on ATP Insights, but also on our other show, the Global Tech Podcast, talking about whether or not we're in an AI bubble and whether this whole thing is sustainable. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch the show. I think it was our previous ATP Insights show. We did a whole segment on it. I don't think we're in a bubble. I think demand is definitely outstripping supply. And we'll get into that in more detail later. But in the AI space, whether it's servers or components or whatever it is for chips, demand is definitely outstripping supply. Now, when you think about the Taiwanese economy as a whole, the export data tells a very, very similar story, right? March exports were not just strong. Get your head around this. The March export numbers extended a run of 29 consecutive months, almost 2.5 years of year-on-year growth. And the reporting says that the finance ministry still expects double-digit export growth in the first half of 2026. That makes this look less like a short-lived shipment surge and more like an ongoing cycle with momentum already embedded into the pipeline. There is also a forward-looking signal in TSMC's near-term expectations. Reuters reported analysts had already lifted their forecast for TSMC's April to June revenue over the prior 30 days to another record level, on the view that demand for advanced AI chips remains strong enough to keep tight capacity supportive of earnings. Demand outstripping supply. Stable growth is usually what matters most in industrial stories, and here the market seems to be pricing not just a strong March, but continued strength into the next quarter. So we talked about TSMC itself, we talked about the full Taiwanese economy, but let's just ask another question here. Is this just a TSMC story, or is it spreading across the entire broader AI hardware system? Well, it's clearly broader than one company. Again, reporting that in March, Taiwan's exports of electronic components rose 44%. That's separate from TSMC, yeah? While information products soared 134.5%. That matters because it shows that strength is showing up across multiple hardware-linked categories, not just inside TSMC, not just one big chip foundry company. That's a good sign for Taiwan. The same broadening shows up in adjacent corporate results. Foxconn, right? I think Foxconn is one of the manufacturers for Apple as well. They have factories all over the place, which Reuters also described as NVIDIA's biggest server maker. Reported first quarter revenue up 29.7, almost 30% year over year, and said strong AI demand drove robust growth in its cloud and networking products business, and said AI rack growth should continue into the second quarter when both the advanced chip producer and a major AI server assembler are showing the same pattern. The story starts to look more like an ecosystem thing and less like an isolated performance thing. Even further down the supply chain, by the way, Taiwan's finance ministry published a bulletin showing exports of glass fiber cloth, a key material used in PCB substrates, hit a record in 2025 and were driven by demand tied to AI servers and advanced semiconductor manufacturing. Just remember those products because a little bit later I'm going to talk about some of the sort of geopolitical consequences of what's happening and some of the risks in this growth. But just remember that for a second. This bulletin by the ministry in Taiwan also said supply-demand conditions for high-end materials were expected to remain tight through 2026 as domestic manufacturers expand their production lines. And that production line expansion, we'll get to that too, but that's actually kind of important as well. That is the kind of detail that makes the growth look structurally rooted, not just like a one-time surge. The AI build-out is pulling through not just chips, but substrates, boards, and other enabling hardware inputs. So what makes this AI growth story feel strong and stable? And we mentioned we're going to talk about some of the risks involved here. What are the biggest things that could undermine this or destabilize it? I think that's important to talk about. The strongest argument for stability is that demand appears to be outrunning supply, not the other way around. Reuters reported Broadcom saying TSMC is hitting production capacity limits with advanced AI chip capacity acting as a bottleneck in 2026, and that shortages are extending beyond chips into lasers and printed circuit boards. Right? So that's really important as well. In normal growth cycles, bottlenecks are frustrating, but they're also evidence that the demand is real enough to strain the physical system and that whole ecosystem as well. Another sign of strength is that customers themselves are behaving as if AI capacity matters over a multi-year horizon. Reuters reported that customers are entering long-term supply agreements. We've spoken about this, right? Lasting 3 to 4 years, while Samsung has been moving toward 3 to 5 year contracts with major customers. That is not how buyers act if they think demand is fleeting or short-term. Go and watch our ATP Insights episode on Samsung as well. Some really, really good information there and a pretty good deep dive into what they're experiencing right now too on their entire AI-related business. The risks are real, but for now, they don't appear to be overwhelming this up to the right trend. Reuters flagged U.S. trade policy and the Middle East conflict as a key watch points for Taiwan exports. Look, if you're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, and that's just happening right now. We don't know how long that's going to last, but for as long as it does last, a lot of the sort of inputs into the making of these chips, but also other computers, come through the Straits of Hormuz. It's a problem. And while Foxconn warned about volatile global politics and Taiwan's February export orders report showed month to month can wobble from month to month, right? But even in that softer February orders release, the ministry still said AI and high performance computing expansion would continue to support orders. So the current picture is this. Macro and geopolitics can create noise, and they're definitely creating noise right now. But AI demand still looks like the stronger underlying force. Okay, let's welcome our guest, Simon Smallcombe. Okay, we're on. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We wanted to have you on because we want to talk about how artificial intelligence and agentic AI are actually impacting the insurance industry today. But before we do that, just give us a little bit about Capco, excuse me.
No, thank you so much for having me on. So Capco is primarily a professional services consulting business. We scale across 38 countries, 8,000 plus people, and we are a connector. Really, we help companies improve bottom line, top line through technology, through operations, through transformation in the main. And my area of expertise is insurance across APAC. So I'm the APAC insurance lead for Capco.
Awesome. Okay, let's just jump right into this. The elephant in the room always is, it feels to me like, is AI and agentic AI, particularly today. Where do you see in the insurance industry the biggest real world impact right now for AI and agentic AI?
That's a great question. A big question as well,
Yeah.
because the speed of change and the appetite for change is at different levels depending on your lens, whether you're a regulator, an insurance company, or potentially even a customer, right?
Yeah.
So where will a customer feel it? Customers will feel it probably in three areas. Firstly, in the way that they purchase insurance across the piece, that should be more seamless. It should feel more intimate as a customer. And then look, it's insurance, right? So we never want to use it. It's a promise for the future or for the short term. So it's a pledge around trust. So what does that mean? It means that when you need it, you want that to be seamless. And quite often when you need that moment for insurance, that difficult scenario where you make a claim, right? That's where people are going to feel it. So the way that people promote insurance and people buy insurance will change from a seamless exercise when it's needed from a claims experience, and then from a policy servicing experience as well. The insurance companies will use much more data and will be much more sophisticated. I really break it into two buckets.
Okay.
I try and make it as simplistic as possible when we're talking about insurance and AI and the impact. And the two buckets I break it into are the hyper-personalization buckets, using more data streams to understand an individual's needs or an individual's preferences in terms of personalizing that experience for them. So it's this journey, this experience, this product is for you, Michael. It's not for Simon. So it's very personalized to where you are in your life, in your journey, particularly with your needs, right? So the one bucket is the personalization. And the other bucket, again, simplistically, is around productivity gains or ease of doing business or becoming seamless, right? So that can be in the front end stage of purchasing through a bank, an agent, an advisor, a broker, and that first part. How can you make that as easy and as seamless as possible from an efficiency gain? And then filtering right the way through the journey to policy issued, right? So people don't want policy documents and long emails that they never read, you just file away. But having a hyper-personalized 60-second video with a person explaining what's covered, what's not covered, how they were protected, why it was the right decision that they bought that product, and how they can trust that that will do something for them in the future, it will engage and it will hopefully promote a more personalized experience as well. So yeah, I mean that's how I break it into those two buckets.
You've just opened up a bunch of different boxes, if you don't mind. And I've taken a lot of notes. Can we go through some of this? Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
So one of the things I think about a lot is you see some companies take their existing workflows and just add a layer of like artificial intelligence on top of it. So nothing changes per se in the workflow. And then you see companies that go, if we're going to use agentic AI, maybe we need to rebuild our entire workflow, not from scratch per se, but we're doing it in the wrong order if we want to have some automation inside there as well. Is that at least a fair characterization?
Because I guess no. So the reason I pause, it depends on your the individual insurance organization's journey and legacy. So what I mean by that is some of these organizations are over 120 years old, right?
Yeah.
Some of the big ones.
The biggest ones are really old, yeah.
Exactly. So they are stable, institutionalized, foundational companies that have been through multiple generations.
Sure.
And that's a great thing because you want trust, right?
One of the things you want an insurance company to have is that stability. You want it to feel rock solid, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
However, there are new incumbents who don't have that legacy, but may be able to start with a blue sky thinking, first principles thinking, who will challenge, and without any legacy, without any historical architecture or evolution of architecture and transformation, they may have an advantage.
Yeah.
As we stand today, and I again, you have to think insurance is such a broad church, from very simplistic travel insurance to more sophisticated financial planning tools, right?
Exactly.
So you may be comfortable buying from a new insurtech a travel policy, which is a very simple,
or like device protection or something like that. Easy. Yeah.
Exactly. Device protection is a great one. Yeah. However, if you are transferring wealth through your family and the numbers are large in terms of estate planning, as we see, particularly in Singapore, Hong Kong, for high net worth, you may want a more long-term established brand that you trust. And those organizations are making great strides, but they have to cater for, however million customers they've got already on the books, and they need to modernize, right? And I think most of them are.
Right, but this is actually a really interesting point. And I'm so glad you opened this up, right? Because we can talk all we want about agentic AI, but at the end of the day, if I'm using my insurance product suite as part of my wealth management, I don't want somebody who's been in the wealth management business for 15 minutes. I want somebody who's been in the wealth management business for 150 years. Because almost by definition, they should understand it better. Plus, they have all these assets under management already, right? So it should be much smoother. And adding an AI layer on top of it doesn't make it necessarily better, does it?
I'm a great believer in the kind of human tech balance.
Go ahead.
So when is technology appropriate? And we find this with our clients, that there are some scenarios where the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
It's a very distressing and traumatic experience.
Yeah.
So if you were to interact with your insurance company, you probably would not want a chatbot to do that. You want somebody to show empathy. You want somebody to show you care, particularly if it's a scenario where you want guidance and help. So in those trusted moments, I think that equipping those individuals with the best technology to answer the questions, and that does use AI, that does bring in data.
On this side,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of behind the front of the counter. It gives the person at the who may be receiving that call the ability to know the customer,
right?
And it gives them the ability to answer the query and reassure and give them confidence, right?
Right.
So we have a very interesting piece of work with a client at the moment where we are working with their customer call center. We are looking at how we can deploy the right level of agentic agents, like the Klarna model, if you like, in terms of what we've done. But we are very mindful of understanding where that's not appropriate for that call center, as an example, right? And that filters through with policy admin, with underwriting, and any area where there's high volume and there's the ability to automate. I mean, this is another kind of myth, if you like. We've had automation for years.
Yeah.
It's not like
it's not new per se.
Algorithms and RPA or automation of processes has not been around for a long period of time. It's the appropriate use, and then it's making sure that what decisions are made where you're using an agentic scenario
right.
can be explained we are in a regulated industry, right? So whether it's the MAS, whether it's the Hong Kong Insurance Authority, who have both embraced AI and are both pro technology, with the pledge, with the recent announcements in terms of MAS's policy in terms of regulations and what they're allowed to do, what they are embracing, and the consultation with industry, which I think is
really
great,
important.
right?
Yeah,
because you've got the regulator and the large insurers working together for the best outcome. Because you have to be able to explain why a decision was taken. It's not like manufacturing where you're just building a car using a robot using AI that will learn, right?
I think about this sometimes. Like, I feel really fortunate actually to be in this part of Asia. You're right. The Hong Kong Insurance Authority, the Monetary Authority of Singapore. I live in Thailand, so the Office of Insurance Commission as well is very, very progressive, actually, particularly when it comes to technology.
I worked in Thailand for 5.5 years and worked with the OIC while I was there, so I know the market pretty well too.
Yeah. So that's super cool. Can we go back for a second? Do you mind? Because I do want to take maybe the device protection is a good place to start, because it is a relatively simplistic product where a lot of technology can actually be applied. But maybe you can walk us through like what an ideal, and I know that's hard to do, but like an ideal flow would be, and where the AI would fit in. And then let's say something happens to your device, you drop it in the river or whatever happens to you, drop it in a pool, and then you need to make a claim. Like, what do you think that should look like? What should the flow look like? Is that fair to ask?
Is it fair to ask?
I've already asked it. So.
For me to design an end-to-end journey for device protection and using AI just on the spot?
No, just what it should look like. I have an idea, right? Because you talked about this seamless thing. It's like, where does agentic AI help stuff be more seamless in a way that it might not have otherwise been? You don't have to go through the whole thing, but just like maybe in little pieces, if that's okay.
Yeah, I guess for me, if it's device protection, it's kind of embedded, right? So there is a scenario where it's a kind of on-off, right? So a lot of insurance companies have partnered with telcos to white label their protection under the telephone company, in terms of you buy a phone, you take out a contract, or you buy data and you get a free subscription. Within there is protection, and it's a kind of opt-in scenario, like yes, I want the protection, no I don't, right? So the actual transaction of purchase in that scenario, it's pretty seamless, right?
Pretty straightforward.
It's very easy, right? When do you want it to kick in? I guess if you've damaged your phone, it should be a notification of loss. There'll be geo mapping on the phone, so the technology should be able to establish, whether it's a legitimate claim or not, and the device protection should be able to indicate how quickly that device can be replaced, where you can collect a new one, and how quickly that data can be backed up and transported to the new phone, right? I mean, device protection wouldn't be my strongest suit in terms of insurance. I'm more
good answer, but that's a good answer though.
More financial planning in terms of more sophisticated financial planning, whether that's agency, banker, broker, or IFA. But for me, in that scenario, it's pretty simple anyway. And I think using customer data appropriately in that scenario. So what do you want? You want a replacement device. You want that device to be up and running as fast as possible, and you want a location to go and get the new phone, right? It's pretty simple.
The reason why I was thinking about it was because I dropped my phone a couple of months ago. I never use a case. I know you're laughing at me. I never use a case, and the whole back of the phone just got destroyed. Like the cameras still work and stuff, but it made me think about like what, because it has an accelerometer in there, right? So we would know that the phone was dropped. Anyway, I just think it's kind of interesting there. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, if you think about the device protection, you think about the iPhone and Apple particularly. I mean, Apple Care is a profitable business, right?
It's a hugely profitable business.
So people value. I mean, people value their devices maybe a little bit more than they should, but in those circumstances where you need it and its connection, because everything goes through it. And you think about Apple Care as a standalone business, as a standalone insurance business within the ecosystem of Apple, it's a very successful business.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
Across the board for all their devices. It's funny, I never get Apple Care either. And now I know what you're thinking. Like, you'd probably jump out of a plane without a parachute. What's wrong with you?
but no, but maybe you self-insure, right? So some people don't need insurance, right? They have the means and the ability to replace their devices because they have
Yeah, I do. I've kind of always done it. But to be fair, literally, I've had since the first iPhone 3G, not the first iPhone, but since the first iPhone 3G came out in Japan, and I believe was 2007. I can't remember anymore. It's a long time ago. Until today, until the iPhone 15 Pro Max, I think it's called, which is what I have now. So it's 2 years old. I've never even dropped my phone. Not once.
But you have now.
I have now, I know. So I have like 19 years of like, did not need the insurance. Anyway, that's a different thing. So where in the insurance value chain is, when you talk to insurers and when you're working with them and stuff, where inside the value chain, where with the stuff where you're most involved is really ready for greater AI interaction or even greater AI autonomy?
So most of the major life insurance insurers, life insurers at the moment, are modernizing from a claims, underwriting, and distribution perspective. So what does that look like? It looks like that first notice of loss and that indication of a claim, trying to make that experience as easy for the customer as possible.
Yeah.
There is a long, long way to go. If you go from people filling in a paper application form to a web or an app service for a claim, depending on the nature of the claim, there's still a long, long way to go. And people are at different ends of the spectrum. At best, it's a digital interface backed up with some imagery that you take pictures of, right?
Yeah.
And then a very instantaneous decision. So claims paid within 60 seconds for a certain criteria would be kind of a high bar in the industry.
Yeah.
But we still, unfortunately, have scenarios where insurers have 10, 15-day turnarounds to make an assessment. So how are we helping insurers do that?
Yeah.
Speed that up for customers, because you want two things, right? You want the customer to have that delight moment that things have gone well and that it's easy to deal with, but you also want, as an insurance company, the customer to feel like they've had value from this experience. And healthcare is probably the best example, right?
Go ahead.
You know, medical inflation across Asia is anywhere between 13 to 16%, right? So the price of cover, private cover, is massively increasing. Insurance companies want to provide that cover, but it's difficult in terms of a price perspective because the cost of cover is rising. And then when you enter into that claims journey, you have another party involved, which could be the medical provider, right? So the medical provider, you need to interface with them from a network perspective. You need to get the data. You need to get, the customer will notify the claim, and then the medical provider will send the data, and that all needs to be pulled together, right? So that ingestion of all the data, from the policy details to the customer details to the experience of the medical provider, right through to an assessor, right? So and the complexity of the claim could be a broken arm or broken leg versus something very obscure and unusual.
Yeah.
So if I'm an insurance company, I have to cater for a wide range of scenarios with a huge database of not only customers but also medical providers, and I want to protect myself against fraudulent claims, but at the same time I want to make sure I pay and give value to those customers with legitimate claims. So we see a lot of focus on how can that journey be seamless? How can the ingestion of all that data using agentic AI be summarized for a claims assessor, for example?
Yeah.
Or how can you auto pay? So would you set a value of X where the data flow has gone from the first notice of claim right the way through to claim payment, and actually no human has touched that? It's totally automated, and it's paid in your bank account as a customer.
Right.
And there are insurers that have robust processes at that level. They've invested in transformation, they've invested in data cleansing, and they've invested in AI to get to that level.
Yep.
And then I guess the next point of that would be, how can you take that into large form data, shrink it into a very succinct summary for a claims assessor to say, yes, I should be paid. So you still make it faster than a 10, 15-day turnaround to maybe a 1-2 day turnaround.
Do you, which is really important, right? I was just going to ask, like, do you think that most, and it may be hard to generalize, but do you think that most big insurers, most incumbent insurers for sure, are focused predominantly or more on these internal processes that make it easier for them to do service rather than the external customer-facing stuff where, like, the customer presses a button and everything gets taken care of? That's what it sounds like to me. Because we look, and to give you an analogy, we did this when I was at Goldman Sachs. We built an entire system so that I could talk to a client and I knew everything about, like, their positions and their trades and stuff like that. So I could say, maybe now's a good time because you've had this position for 6 months. It's gone up 37%. Do you know what I mean? I had all this information in the same way that a claims adjuster or an assessor would now get all this new information. So you could, like you said earlier, so they could personalize it and make it intimate for the person. So if I'm talking to them from a customer service perspective, I know everything about you in a way that makes it feel like you're so important. Is it more of a focus on internal stuff where they makes their jobs easier and better? Or on making, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand the question well, actually. And I think the analogy in using kind of an asset management point of view versus an insurance company, sometimes it gets lost, and sometimes banks get compared to insurance companies. And I quite often say, well, the frequency of touch point for a bank is every single day, right?
Yeah.
Your branch in your mobile phone,
Yep.
your app is every single day. Either you're sending, receiving, or reviewing assets, or your every day, right?
Yep. Yeah.
In the main, your interaction with your insurance provider, maybe renewal once a year.
Yep.
Maybe for less complicated products, maybe something happens and you need to make a claim, right? So the interaction is a lot less. So from an insurance perspective, you want these interactions to be as easy as possible.
Right.
So most of our clients that we work with is twofold. One, it's about improving NPS, Net Promoter Score,
Yep.
making that customer experience solid in every touch point, whether that's a telephone call, a web inquiry, a claim, a renewal, whichever interaction. How can we make that end-to-end sequence of events for the customer intuitive, inspiring, and a positive experience where they will talk about our insurance company in a positive light? And then the other part to that is, how can we be as efficient as possible? I mean, we are in an environment where technology has meant that the cost to do things, particularly from a labor point of view, has come down, right? So how can we deploy our teams to be more effective, to improve what we do? And how can we use the technology to make faster, better decisions?
Yeah. Do you think
so? It is both. So it is both. So most of the clients that we have are very, very focused on the customer. I think that customer interaction is key. I think if you look at every single strategy and mission statement of an insurance company, you'll find customers there.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned this idea, and I've thought about this a lot too, right? That the insurance interactions, the company interactions with their clients is really minimal, right? It's only like when important things happen, where it's like your bank, literally like you're making payments every day, you're taking money and like it's constant in a way. I think this is one of the reasons why the bank app, at least the one that I use, is so good. It's because so many people are using it so often that if it wasn't that good, people would switch banks because that's how they do their banking now. Do you think there's a way? And I just thought about this. You can say like, I don't know, I haven't thought about it, but like, do you think there's a way to use AI and even agentic AI to have more touch points with people? Because now you can just program them to do it like once a week or once a month or just something interesting that's going on to kind of educate people about something. I don't know, just have more interactions. So when you do deal with your insurance company, you're like, oh, I know these guys and gals kind of thing.
So again, I would use health as an example, right?
Yep.
The leisure, health, and well-being industry has been exponentially growing with the more knowledge that we have of healthcare, mental health, diet, nutrition, and just physical well-being. So the area that I go to when you mention that, and many insurers have and are, is around preventative measures. So how can we be an advocate for well-being? And there are obviously some very prominent insurance companies that do this particularly well. And as a customer receiving those kind of well-being notifications and the push where you might connect to a health app where you promote better choices for customers,
Yeah.
prevent them needing to use their policy or to promote them from a well-being perspective. I mean, there are many organizations that have done this. So I think that kind of outreach works there. There's a balance between, you're a consumer the same as I am, right? We're both customers, but there's a balance between having these nudges and these notifications that add value,
Right.
and the other ones where you kind of like, it's just frustrating, right? You're like, I don't need that. So I think partnerships will be key there, actually.
Yeah.
I think that there are some potential partnerships that I see that haven't been executed yet that could have huge potential.
Can you mention any or just one? Just as an example, because you don't have to say it, but watch this. I was writing stuff down. I live in Thailand. During the summertime here, the sun is really, really strong, right? And if you have too much sun exposure,
right now, you mean the heat index last week was 52 degrees?
Yeah, but I mean, it feels like it's 900 degrees outside.
Thailand.
Yeah, it feels like it's 900 degrees outside. But I walk to the gym every day, and my insurance company knows that I'm outside because they know. Like I turn on my walking app every time.
Yep.
So that could send a notification to them. But I mean, and if I get too much sun coverage, I may get skin cancer. That's bad for the insurance company. It's also bad for me. But I mean, even a little nudge like, hey, Michael, you may want to put on some SPF 54 today or 52 today is not something I think that people would just ignore. They'd be like, yeah, probably I should because the UV index is so high. And then another example I thought of was like your annual checkup. Like we know your annual checkup is coming up. Please make sure you do that. Now that you're some age, please make sure you take care of that. But almost more importantly, from a partnership perspective, and this is what made me think about it, if there is a death in your family, the mental health impacts for this can actually be kind of strong. And if an insurance company partners with a mental health provider, I was thinking like BetterHelp, just because it's the only one that I've heard of that's online, right? Partners with them, they could direct you there, and maybe you can get some mental health help via your insurance company through that partnership. That's what I was thinking about.
It's ironic actually because I know BetterHelp pretty well actually from personal experience.
Great.
And they are fantastic.
Yeah,
that's what and I'm a huge advocate of them and also of that partnership that you described, right? Because you can imagine that quite often it's the younger generation who may be ringing the insurance company to report the death of a loved one.
Right.
And that partnership offering that kind of service above and beyond using technology, I think would be an area where insurers potentially could expand their reach. And then if you think about a lot of insurers do pass generation to generation, so that their advisory population, whether it's an agent or through a bank, quite often they'll advise the grandfather, father, son, or grandmother, mother, daughter. And that comes back to that trust scenario, right? So yeah, that's a good example of a potential partnership. There are others. There are others that I think, when you think about the potential of the data, you mentioned geo mapping. It knows that you're out in the sun. It doesn't know whether you're wearing sunscreen. It doesn't know whether you have an umbrella, but it knows you're out in the sun, right? So it knows you're commuting to the gym, but then you're in the gym, right? So there's a wellness app that you're probably using for the gym. And some of this is already happening, right? Some of this is happening. And it does bring us full circle to my mind. I'm comfortable as an individual to share my data. I feel like the trade-off has enough benefit.
I agree.
All right?
I agree.
So, but my level of comfort might not be the same as
somebody else's,
somebody else or another person, right? So I'm an advocate of technology. I'm an advocate of AI, responsible AI.
Same.
And that's where I think the regulators and the sandbox and the consultation is absolutely key, right? Because you can't just opt the decisions out to the agentic AI and say, well, it was so efficient, it did what it needed to do. So can you explain why my health insurance wasn't paid because your AI made a decision not to pay it?
Right.
Right. Yeah. So when, we have a very strong data practice in APAC, and that's kind of the precursor for using any tools before you go into kind of build or POC, POVs, right? So our data practice is very, very busy and growing rapidly at the moment. It's doubled in the last 3 years every year.
Wow.
So which tells you everything, right? Tells you everything you need to know. But there's appetite. People are focusing on data, structured, unstructured, what their data strategy is, what their data governance is. But then the kind of next step to that is what we've decided to do is slightly different to some of our other competitors in the market. We've built an AI studio where we house technical capability and some very smart individuals there.
Interesting.
And rather than bring a solution to the market for insurance, what we've decided to do is partner with a few insurers and ask them to share their challenges and their problems with us.
Right.
And sometimes share synthetic data. So share synthetic data sets, tell us what the problem is, let us work on it, and let us come back to you with things that we think could be a proof of value, proof of concept before we scale. I read an article last week, 90% of AI solutions are POV, POCs are not scaling.
I read the same thing.
So, that's staggering, right? Given the amount of investment, the amount of attention, the topic, that to me seems like a lot of money is being spent and the value's not coming from it.
Right. A lot of failed experiments.
I
love this.
AI is not the solution for everything. The other thing, which sorry to cut you there.
No, go ahead.
The other thing that I think could be very interesting from an insurance perspective is not using LLMs, because you don't need an LLM. You can use a small language model just to do that particular function.
Exactly.
And you can control and understand the decision-making authorities within there to solve the problem. You don't need it to be.
You don't want it to be, because because you're introducing so many opportunities for just misunderstanding. The thing about an LLM, first of all, is that it's probabilistic, not deterministic. right? And the second thing is it includes, like it's in the name, it's a large language model. If you don't know what LLM stands for, you're in the wrong place, right? But if you have a smaller thing that's just a data set around the stuff that you care about and that impacts the things that you do, you're less likely to get probabilistically the wrong answer as well, no?
Absolutely, absolutely, and using a smaller data set
Yeah.
to solve at speed problems that are or problems and challenges that are easily identifiable but have significant contributions to an insurance business, I think works well. I guess part of the thing that we are doing, we are also doing educational sessions for board and executive C-suites, so that the level of understanding and awareness, because the pressure to do something marvelous with AI,
it's high.
It's extremely high.
Super high.
From shareholders.
Because they're reading the news and they're saying, like, these guys are doing that thing. How come you're not doing that thing? Whatever that thing is,
Yeah. So cutting through some of the hype and using the appropriate tools and technologies for clients is really, really important. We tend to take the approach of not coming with all the answers and solutions and sitting on the same side of the table as Capco. It's one of the feedback points that I've got from clients, is that what we like about you is that you'll sit on the same side of the table with us, and we'll work through how we make this or how we take this opportunity and we work together to solve the problem, and we bring some great people and some great minds along, and obviously the client has the subject matter expertise quite often anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, look, I'm going to let you go. We've covered a lot of stuff, a lot of ground actually, and I really want to thank you for doing this. Really great insights and really great information, and I hope you had as much fun doing this as I did.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, it's been great.
Okay, that's it for ATP Insights. Thank you again for joining us today. Give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you would like us to discuss on our upcoming shows. Send us questions as well. We'd love to do as much AMA, Ask Michael Anything, as we possibly can. My name is Michael Waits. Bye for now.